On a Thursday here, getting everything. You were out late last night. I was not really out late last night, but I was
Thanks for bragging.
up later than I wanted to be.
Yeah, I noticed that you sent the rundown at like 10:30.
Well,
and I'm like,
so we've got a lot to get to today, but Omaha Supernovas got their first match underway last night, which is why you were late. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh no longer the coach at Michigan. When I say it that way, it makes it sound like he got fired. He didn't get fired. He's the head coach of the Chargers now. But so the reason I didn't go to Supernovas last night, and the reason I was out a little bit later was yesterday was the 5-year anniversary of me proposing to my wife.
Congratulations, man!
And thank you. And we celebrate like kind of all the little silly anniversaries and stuff, and of course the big wedding one as well. But it's kind of one of those things where we don't have kids. We don't we don't have to spend money on like birthdays and stuff like that. And I'm a bad uncle, so I don't spend money on my nieces and nephews' birthdays or anything. And so we're like, yeah, we'll just celebrate all our little anniversaries. So that's why I was out late last night. And then, of course, she had to go to Target for some reason. So we were out even later.
Well, all women have to go to Target at some point, right?
She was like, oh, yeah, but we got to go to Target. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yes. Just what I wanted.
Sometimes I don't mind. Like when we're there pretty close to when they're closing, I'm like, this is not where I want to be right now. But no, so that's why I was up a little late. But you were at the Supernovas. It was a 5-set thriller. They got a terrific crowd. Was 11,600.
Unbelievable.
11,600, I believe, was the number.
And some change.
Yeah, like 624, I think, something like that. But a great crowd. You could hear the energy from all the social media clips I saw from all of our great teammates here at Hurrdat Sports. I just couldn't be more pleased with how the city of Omaha responded to this event and how our team covered it. What were your kind of impressions? I wasn't really sure. I wasn't sure what to expect from the crowd. I wasn't really sure what to expect from just from a sheer number standpoint, but they sounded super engaged and seemed like they were there reasonably early as well, which is not something you always get from the CHI crowd during certain Creighton games. But the visuals of it on social media were incredible.
Yeah, it was great. First, I want to say you mentioned anniversaries. I want to give an anniversary shout out to my parents.
Oh, nice.
Today is their wedding anniversary.
Do you know how many?
My sister is 30 going on 31.
Okay.
So my guess would be 32-ish,
somewhere in there.
32.
Yeah.
So happy anniversary.
That's
Mom
awesome.
And Dad, I love you. But no, as you said, my first and early takeaways from that match outside of the atmosphere was, I didn't think the Supernovas looked very polished early on.
Okay.
They weren't playing with the same tenacity as the Vibe. It seemed like Atlanta had a step up on them. And if you were revisiting the preseason rankings, you would think the Vibe would be one, the Supernovas would be two.
Mm-hmm.
The Omaha wasn't connecting on all cylinders. They have a very talented roster,
mm-hmm.
but it was like, have they gelled yet? Have they come together yet? And, I don't know what Coach Collier said to the team after set 2 going into set 3, but I want some of what they're having because it just over hours. I wish I could say overnight they figured it out, but like over hours they figured it out and they gelled instantly. I'm telling you, man, they went from a team of misfits to a family in 1 hour's time.
Yeah, basically between sets 2 and 3, right?
I mean, when you saw the way they reacted together on the bench,
mm-hmm.
it was like these women have been playing together for years.
Yeah.
But if you watched them in the first set, it was like, do they even know each other?
Yeah, it's like they hadn't met each other. They met each other in that night.
Right. So, like, those were some of the things I picked up on. But I think the Supernovas may have had a little bit of nerves coming into that match, especially because of the showing.
Which is understandable.
I'm not going to sit here and say that, all of them have played in front of crowds like that before. because all of their backgrounds are so different.
Outside of the Wisconsin and Nebraska ones, probably not a ton.
I can't imagine they see 10,000 people on the regular.
Yeah, maybe like a one-off here or there, but probably not a ton. Yeah.
But, once they kind of got over those nerves and really settled down, I think that's when you saw the best of the Supernovas.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended in a ton of momentum, right? In set 3 and 4, this crowd was itching to get off their seat after the first point. So they were just waiting and desiring that moment to where they could just explode. And don't get me wrong, they were loud. They were crazy. They were obnoxious in such a good way last night. If Omaha can get that every single match, no other team in this Pro Volleyball Federation is going to compete with this crowd. Like this is going to be the place that people want to play just because of the turnout you saw at the CHI last night. But the big disappointment was when this team was up 13-10 in set 5 and allowed 5 unanswered.
Yeah,
that was rough. A huge disappointment because, as I said, they had all the momentum. But then all of a sudden, after a timeout, the Vibe were just returning everything.
Yeah.
They returned every single ball. And it was like I saw remnants of set 1 and set 2 again in those 5 points. Now,
well, and when you dig yourself that much of a hole, you kind of put yourself in a position where it's like, hey, if we do have a small bad stretch, we could be in trouble. Especially, obviously, set 5s are shorter sets, right? So you kind of put yourself in a tough position there, right? And you just also wonder, okay, you expend, you see this in basketball all the time, right? You expend so much energy on a big comeback that sometimes you're not able to get over the hump and finish the job. And that, to me, that sounds a little bit like maybe what was happening there as well.
I was talking to Andy Kendi while I was at the match, sports director over at KETV, and we were looking at the roster. Okay. Because, so early on, I was having trouble figuring out like who the best were or like the level of competition. I was having trouble figuring out the level of competition here.
Sure.
Like, I know it's professional, but like how professional based on who I know on the roster. And, there's somebody at the bottom of the roster here. It's Maggie Cartwright. And if you remember Maggie, she played for Arkansas. They faced off against Nebraska this season in the playoffs or in the tournament. She was really good. Like,
yeah.
The star player of that team. But she didn't see the floor. So, like, we're kind of like, I don't know, uncomfortably laughing back and forth as we're trying to figure out, like, hey, how good is this team actually when you see, like, we witnessed a really good player in the NCAA tournament last year, and she's not even on the floor.
Right.
So does that just tell you, like, where this team is at? Is that hey, actually, she may not just be up to speed yet for this pro game, whatever it is. But if it is the first one, if it is the first part of that just goes to show the 6, 7, 8 other players on this roster that are better than she is, at least talent-wise in the eyes of Coach Collier. So,
or at least ahead of where she is right now.
Right. How does that not get you excited?
Well,
to just know that, like, I witnessed how good she was on the court in the NCAA tournament, and she's not even on the court for this pro team right now.
Well, we talked about it a lot where, there's Olympians, there's people that have played in the Olympics. That's been, to this point, the highest level of volleyball that we've really seen in this country. And you've got a mix of Olympians. You mentioned, from the NCAA tournament. Obviously, you've got Nebraska players, Wisconsin players. I mean, you're getting the best of the best because this is really the first opportunity for these women to play professionally without going overseas. I don't know that people necessarily appreciate how big of a deal that is for them. And, you saw it. One of the coolest things that we saw from social media last night was just all the different groups of people and, like, young girls volleyball teams. I think the Omaha Roadrunners were out there, and I saw a picture of them last night. And I think Coach Collier said, there's going to be, like a 13-year-old girl out here tonight that's going to play pro volleyball because she saw us play tonight. And like, that's such a cool thing, right? Like, yeah,
and it's a true statement.
And it is true, right? Like, it's disappointing that they weren't able to finish it off, because that would have been, kind of the movie ending, right? You come to Omaha, they get down 2 sets, they have this big dramatic comeback, and yeah, that would have been awesome if they were able to finish it off. But the bigger story of what happened last night is not about the win, not about the loss, not about even how they played, but just the opening of this opportunity and the opening of this door for young girls, young women to see, oh, hey, this is an option for me, right? And listen, I get not everybody that plays volleyball as a 13-year-old is going to be professional quality, right? But, I kind of go back to thinking, this is sort of a weird example, but do you remember you remember this movie? It was pretty bad. $1 Million Arm.
I do remember $1 Million Arm.
So it's the story of this agent, the sports agent that goes to India, has a contest to have he's trying to find cricket players. Neither of them that he ended up signing were actually cricket players. But he's like, well, there's sort of a skill set overlap between cricket and baseball. Like, maybe I can find some diamonds in the rough. And I went to go see the movie in the theater. My dad's from India. I was born here, and I loved baseball growing up. I was obsessed with baseball growing up. I was the only kid that looked like me that was ever on the field. And it is something I thought about when I was younger. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of the odd man out here. And listen, I wasn't good enough to play professionally. I get that. But I got a little emotional when I saw that movie as an adult, because I was like, man, it would have been really cool to be able to point to someone and be like, oh, that guy looks like me. That would have been really awesome, just to be able to, like, oh yeah, it's possible, even, right? Even if it's not possible for me, because I wasn't good enough. I'm, 5'9", didn't throw hard enough. Like, whatever.
You also hurt your shoulder in 4th grade, and if like that didn't happen, you would have been pro.
Yeah, I mean, like,
gone pro for sure.
Listen, I would have played some nice NAI ball if I didn't hurt my shoulder, right? And I would have had a great time. But like, it was, you kind of point at it, and it's really cool to see people that look like you succeeding in the thing that you love, and that's the most important thing from this Omaha Supernovas. And not just that it exists, but it exists, and 11,000 people came out to watch.
Yeah, good luck any other team in this league.
Yeah,
to throw out 11,000 people.
I hope they do.
You won't, though, because these Omaha fans are different.
And listen,
these Nebraska fans. Let me take the whole state, because I know people were in from Lincoln.
Absolutely,
these Nebraska fans are different.
And listen, honestly, I hope that other teams come close, because we've seen what happens when Nebraska volleyball fans feel like somebody's encroaching on their territory. They just up the ante. They're like, oh, Wisconsin, you got 20,000, we're going to get 21. Oh, you got 22, we're going to get 92. Like, that's what this state does with volleyball. And so I do hope some of these not just for the health of the league, right? But I do hope that some of these other teams get close in their attendance. I hope somebody brings out like 9,000, 10,000, and then Nebraska fans will be like, oh, you think you're good? All right, we're gonna sell this place out.
You want more just to jumpstart it.
Yes.
Meanwhile, for me, I want it to be, hey, Omaha is the place I don't want to play.
Listen, and I still think it'll be that way. Even if they do start drawing great crowds in other places, I think Omaha and Nebraska will answer the bell. I think they will. I think they'll do the same thing they do for Creighton basketball. I think they'll do the same thing they do for Nebraska volleyball. They will answer the bell and say, no, this is our thing, and we're going to dominate.
Now, a question that maybe nobody wants to hear or talk about at this time, because it's just match one, but I kind of want to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Because this state is used to winning and winning often when it comes to volleyball. So for you, how fast does this team need to win in order to keep these fans as engaged as they are and keep that buy-in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. It really is, because I thought about it last night as I'm watching this. I was like, Nebraska and Omaha specifically really responds to big events, right? Whether it's we've had the NCAA volleyball tournament here. We've had NCAA wrestling here. We've had swim trials, obviously College World Series.
Basketball every time to be here this year.
Every time the NCAA basketball tournament comes in town, Nebraska responds, right? I wonder, because outside of Creighton basketball and outside of Nebraska football and volleyball, the sustained seasons we don't have as much track record on, right? Nebraska football is part of the DNA of the state, so it's kind of like, okay, that's a given. I don't think volleyball was a given, and that's something that Nebraska volleyball fans have really responded to. I don't think Creighton basketball was a given when they moved into this to the CHI Health Center back in the day when it was the Quest Center 20 years ago, right? I don't even think Quest exists anymore. The company, much less the arena, right? So it was not a given though, because they're playing in the Civic. That's like 6,000 people, something like that, and they didn't even always pack that thing out. And so you're like, okay, we're going to go to a place that's 3 times as big, and we don't like this is going to work out. And guess what? It did, right? So I'm curious to see how Nebraskans and Omahans and volleyball fans respond on a, hey, yeah, we've got 2 home games this week. We want 11,000 at both of them. We want 12,000 at both of them, whatever, right? That's the next step. And you're right. Winning, I do think, is part of that, because there are expectations if you play volleyball in this state that you're going to win, because look at Nebraska. Obviously, they've got their track record. Look at Creighton the last 10 years. They've got a really good winning track record. Omaha is winning at volleyball. If you need to win at volleyball if you're in this state. So I think it has to be pretty quick in terms of the Omaha Supernovas starting to get some W's. And listen, if you look at the way they played in sets 3 and 4 last night, you think, okay, that's not going to be an issue, right? Even in set 1, I think it went to extra points, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was an opportunity there. You mentioned they were up 13-10 in the 5th set. There was a lot of opportunities there for them to win that match. But I think you're right. The wins are going to have to come. That's a non-negotiable, because the goodwill of the idea of this league will only carry you so far at some point. And
you can't be 8-16 and expect to bring out 11,000 people every match.
Yeah, there's an expectation of quality of volleyball, and there's an expectation of being successful, right? That's how these endeavors kind of start to take off. And so if Omaha is going to be the flagship franchise of this league, they do have to win. There's really no way around that. That's how professional sports are, right? You don't get the goodwill of 100 years of Nebraska football as your the shirt you're wearing today, right? I didn't even realize that.
Perfect.
But you've got a
perfect analogy.
You don't have the benefit of the doubt of 100 years of Nebraska college football when you're starting something new, right? You have to put on a good show, a good product, and give people a reason to come back, because people are obviously interested. We saw that last night. They want to be a part of this. Now, give them a reason to stay.
Right. And again, this team is full of talent.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't be the preseason number 1 if they weren't full of talent. So it's hard to believe that they go 8-16, but I really do think you need to win early.
Absolutely.
Because at some point you're going to get out of the this is wonderful stage. This is wonderful for
the novelty.
The community.
The novelty wears off.
You're going to get out of that. And it's going to turn into, I want to see my team win. I want to see my team be competitive every single night. And if they aren't, you'll slowly see less and less coming into the building. It's important to find ways to win early. And, let's go back to that match just one more time and focus on the bright spots. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of bright moments in set 3 and 4. They had a ton that they can take away and say, this is who we expected to be. We just didn't get there early enough in this match.
We started late. Yeah.
But if they show that off in the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and say they are even 2-2, they don't even have to go 3-1 in that stretch. Say they're 2-2. That's okay, because they're still trying to get their feet underneath them. They're still trying to all connect with one another and realize each other's isms, right? Like where they're going to be positionally, because I noticed that a little bit too last night of this one's like kind of in my zone, but I don't know if I should go for it or not. They don't really know each other's tells yet.
Yeah.
And once they pick up on those, this team will gel. They will understand one another and where they'll be on the court at all times, and know that, oh, if this ball's over my left shoulder, don't worry, X and Y teammate is going to dig this out, and then it's going to be my turn to set it up for Dixon in the middle or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty common for a team that hasn't been together that long, right? You see that all the time with teams that are bringing in a bunch of new players on franchises that already existed, right? This is all new. And so I do think you have to kind of give it a little bit of a learning curve. But I do think there's plenty of talent on the roster to make it all work. It's just a matter of, like you said, finding that teamwork, gelling together in a way that we saw in the third and fourth sets to allow them to to hopefully find that groove much earlier in their next match, which I believe is a week from Saturday. Do I have that correct?
Next match against San Diego.
The Mojo
is February 3rd.
Yep. So that
day
is
before my birthday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So that is a week from Saturday. That's back at home. So you've got about, you got 8-9 days to kind of decompress and get back out there settle in and get back out there for
I got to tell you too, when Gina stepped onto the floor,
mm-hmm.
Gina Mancuso-Prasowski, that crowd went crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
And the best part was they kind of got teased because Gina subs in, but then a review takes place and it ends up the point goes to the Vibe. So she has to go back on the bench and then she had to come back on again. And the response wasn't as loud.
Yeah.
But they were like, still, she was the loudest one these fans cheered for.
For sure.
And it kind of gives you goosebumps.
Absolutely.
Even if they're not cheering for you, they're just cheering that loud for a player, a team. Like, I'm sure, like, there were a lot of nerves for these women. And once they really feel the love versus feel the stress and the pressure, they're going to be something special.
They'll be off to the races. We will set up the show coming up next. It's a busy Thursday. We are obviously going to get to Jim Harbaugh heading to the Chargers. What does that mean for Michigan? And we will talk a bunch of college basketball, as well as we're going to try and sprinkle in some Hurrdat hot seat when we've got time throughout the show today. All that and more coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me.
What up?
We are live from Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I want to remind you, as you're maybe on your way to work this morning, maybe getting ready to get into the car, use your seatbelt. Using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries, but only if it is worn properly. Make it click. This is a message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We've got a good show for you here this morning. Maybe a great show. We'll see. I think good's the floor, great's the ceiling. We'll see where we land in there. Coming up at 8 o'clock.
Great's the ceiling? How about supernova?
Great. Love it. We've got John Fanta coming up.
Bad.
Well, listen, not all segues are winners. Not all radio, hits are winners, but we'll get it. We'll figure it out. We
tried to be a dad. Didn't work.
Well, you're not a dad yet, so
That's
you got
true.
you got
I
time.
got time.
You got time.
I'm just practicing.
Yeah, just get your reps.
I'm getting
in.
all the bad
You're
ones
okay.
out.
John Fanta from Fox Sports, college basketball analyst, does some play-by-play as well. He was on the call for Providence and Seton Hall last night. He will join us at 8 a.m., talk a little college hoops. 8:30, Anthony Broom, who covers Michigan for the Wolverine On 3, part of the On 3 network. He will join us to talk. Okay, is it Sharon Moore? What's next for the Michigan Wolverines? At 8:45, see if we can win you a little bit of money with our guy Brian Edwards. 9 o'clock, we've got Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. I know he's excited because I believe college baseball practice opens tomorrow. He's going to be pumped for that. And then we wrap up the show with Bob Nightengale. Speaking of baseball, he covers baseball for the USA Today. The Hall of Fame class went in or got elected this week for Major League Baseball. So that's some things I want to ask him about. A guy near and dear to my heart. Love me some Adrian Beltre. He got in I always liked Adrian Beltre, and then he played for the Sox, and I was like, okay,
his antics were
this is my guy.
They were unbelievable.
That and like
him and Elvis Andrus and the relationship that they had on the baseball
yeah.
diamond was, I mean, nothing less than magical.
That was a dude that you could tell loved baseball, just loved playing baseball every day. His like one down on a knee home runs, a la Reggie Jackson from back in the day. Like Adrian Beltre was an all-time favorite and an all-timer at third base in terms of his glove. Incredible stuff. Really enjoyed watching him play. So yeah, he got in. Todd Helton got in. I think there was a couple more. One
more.
Come on, Billy Wagner.
No, he just missed.
Okay. Who was the third one?
Come on, man.
Okay, Todd Helton, Adrian Beltre.
One of the best to ever do it at his position.
Sheffield.
Nope. Sheffield did not get in, and that is, as Shane knows, I am very upset that.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. He's very good.
And
he's
it's not
deserving.
It's not just because he's very good. It's because of the way that people are voting.
Yeah.
Because of an accusation. Not even a failed test.
No.
Nothing. Because of an accusation.
Well, and also because of, and we'll get into this with Bob Nightengale, but he covers baseball for USA Today, if I didn't say that. But the way in which it doesn't even apply uniformly, like David Ortiz was also accused of using steroids. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And then a rumor or whatever comes up about a guy like Gary Sheffield, he's out forever, right? Never.
And he'll get in.
Hopefully,
like a special committee will put him in a few
I hope
years.
so. Who's the third guy? Who did I miss?
American League.
Okay.
American League Central.
Okay. Oh, Joe Mauer.
There you go.
You know, I knew that one because I saw him and so I saved this. I was going to make a video and I haven't done it yet. I still might. But so he was committed to play quarterback at Florida State. And I was so excited about him playing quarterback for Florida State. He was going to take over for Chris Wenke. He was going to be like the next great Florida State quarterback. And then he obviously goes number 1 in the draft, goes to his hometown, Minnesota Twins, the whole thing. And so it's like, okay, obviously he's going to go play baseball.
Yeah, you're not going to break up that nostalgia.
And like, okay, he's a Hall of Famer. Obviously it worked out. But I wanted to be like,
still selfishly upset.
Yeah, I was still like, I still think he should have gone and played football.
Well, if you remember too, Todd Helton was Peyton Manning before Peyton Manning.
He was, yeah. He started over Peyton Manning at one point at Tennessee when Peyton Manning was a true freshman. So we love those multi-sport athletes.
It seems like why couldn't they bless me with something? Like,
why get two? Give me one.
Why can you be a two-sport fantastic athlete and I'm over here like, oh, I was so close.
I'll take something.
Oh, I was close to being a college player.
I'll take something that wasn't even that cool. If you want to toss me, like, it doesn't have to be like
darts.
It doesn't have to be like baseball, football, basketball, whatever. Like, just give me something. I'll take table tennis. Like
Ravi's the king of toss across.
I do love playing darts, though. I'm a big darts guy. But yeah, so we'll talk to Bob Nightengale about the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. I believe it's just actually the Baseball Hall of Fame, but the Major League Baseball players inducted or voted into the Hall of Fame this week. And maybe more importantly, some of the players left out, as you mentioned. Gary Sheffield, Billy Wagner just missed.
And then some weird ones like Andrew Jones is picking up steam or has been picking up steam as of late. It seems which I love, writers are appreciating defense more.
Which Andrew Jones is weird because he was incredible defensively at the start of his career. And then he kind of skated on that reputation for a while. And the back half of his career, he was actually pretty bad defensively as he got a little bigger and like was less mobile as he aged and stuff. But Andrew Jones is a super interesting case because he's got a lot of the numbers that you'd be close to a Hall of Famer, but like he's 400 home runs, not 500 home runs. He was really good defensively for a chunk of his career and then kind of fell off.
Yeah,
he doesn't have
they're
like
appreciating those things though.
They are, but like you look at him, especially for like modern standards, when we've gotten into analytics and stuff, his on base percentage isn't very good. His OPS isn't
if
crazy.
Andrew Jones is a Hall of Famer, Gary Sheffield's a Hall
of Famer. 100%. I mean,
Gary Sheffield, actually, if you look at like numbers and how they match
Sheffield's
up against,
really good.
Like everybody else that made it into the Hall of Fame this year, like look at his hits. Look at his home runs. Look at his RBI totals. Look at everything.
Yeah, I mean, so Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield has 75 more home runs than Andrew Jones. His batting average is almost 50 points higher. His on-base percentage is 60 points higher. His OPS is 80 points higher. Like, he's just better across the board as a hitter than Andrew Jones was. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to be pushing for Andrew Jones, even though I liked Andrew Jones, because I watched a ton of Braves games back in the day.
Yeah, if you're not pushing for Gary Sheffield.
Yeah, but Gary Sheffield deserves to be ahead of that line in front of Andrew Jones. And I know this doesn't necessarily matter, but I think it should. I think Gary Sheffield was a more iconic baseball player than Andrew Jones was. And to a certain extent, that's sort of it's called the Hall of Fame, right? Like, so your status within the game kind of matters, I think. I think there's sort of an immeasurable quality, an intangible quality to Hall of Famers that, for instance, like Pedro Martinez, obviously he has the numbers to get in, but they're not the same type of numbers you would have seen from guys back in the day. But for a 5-year stretch in the middle of the steroid era, no one could hit Pedro Martinez, right? It's kind of like the modern Sandy Koufax, where there was just this stretch where he was totally unhittable, except for he did it in the most juiced up era in baseball history. And you're like, what do you mean his ERA was 1.73 and the league I think the next guy on the list, that was 1.73, I think was his 2000 season. The next guy on the list was like
2.7 at the best.
I think it was 4. I think it was like 3.8 or 4 was number 2 in ERA in the league. Like, his league adjusted number, or his era adjusted numbers,
it's wild,
are bonkers, right? So even if he didn't get to the 300 wins or whatever that a lot of these guys do, you're like, okay, his status within the game matters. Gary Sheffield has a better status within the game, I think, than a guy like Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones was a really nice player for a really long time, and you could probably tell the history of baseball without him. Like, that's kind of what it comes down to. It's the same way we talked about this with the Heisman, right? Like, that's why I'm like, okay, yeah, Jaden Daniels, really nice player, put up really nice stats. Can you tell the story of the 2023 season and leave Jaden Daniels out of it? Yeah, you really can. Can't do that for some of the other guys. You couldn't do that with Michael Penix. Can't tell the story of 2023 without Michael Penix. So we'll get to more baseball randomly in January, because why not, here at the end of the show.
Because baseball matters, man.
Baseball does matter. People don't realize, like, there is a part of me that's still a huge baseball nerd. I don't get into it the way that I used to, but it is like deeply embedded in my soul, because it's the thing I cared most about when I was a kid. But coming up next, we will continue. We'll wrap up hour number 1, and I promise we will talk Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as we wrap up hour number 1. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We've got a lot of stuff going on today. Random stuff, but a lot going on, which we're always grateful for in the late January time period. One of the things
I'll never be mad.
Listen,
when football isn't in season, Nebraska football,
right.
that is, if we have content to share, it makes life a breeze.
Stuff happening is the best, which we thank our Omaha Supernovas friends for having stuff happening last night. And thank the Los Angeles Chargers. Every single time I want to say San Diego. It's
okay.
Every single time.
That's one that I'm cool with.
Listen, they belong in San Diego.
Could you just say St. Louis Rams then?
I almost have before, to be honest. The issue with the Rams is I remember the first time they were in Los Angeles briefly.
It makes sense.
And then I remember them moving. So they were in St. Louis for the most of my life, but I do remember them in Los Angeles. I will say the Raiders is one that I struggle with. I want to say Oakland all the time. This is the third city they've been in my life.
At least you're not saying the Los Angeles Raiders.
I was going to say they were in LA. I remember that. Then they were in Oakland. I remember that.
Oakland.
Now they're in Vegas, and I forget that half the time because
they were in San Francisco for a minute.
We took a photo outside of Allegiant Stadium.
Did you?
In Vegas over the weekend, and that place is sick.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl being there is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, put them in the newest stadium around.
Did you see the Emperor? I mean, because they call it the Death Star, so I didn't know if you saw.
No, that's the Sphere. That's not Legion, is it? I thought it was the Sphere is the Death Star.
They
call
Allegiant the Death Star too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Is that because that's where players go to die, or
pretty much?
Yeah,
so.
the Raiders franchise is where players go to their careers go to die at least.
But their owner's the Emperor. So.
I don't really care about the Sphere. The Sphere is just a building.
It's kind of cool. I kind of like some of the stuff they do on it, but
you can see it from a distance.
Yeah,
you don't have to be.
You don't have to go see it.
Like from me to the double doors here in the restaurant.
Yeah.
To be like, oh my gosh, I saw the Sphere. Like we were driving from the airport, and I'm like, oh, there's the Sphere. I'm good.
You can see that thing from space practically. But we do have Jim Harbaugh at the Los Angeles Chargers. That's the correct place.
Which is a
that
great
they play
hire for them.
It's terrific hire for them. It does. So let's do the Chargers part of this first, right? you get a guy in Jim Harbaugh. So it has been a decade basically since he's been in the NFL, but was a wildly successful NFL coach. 3 NFC championships in his 4 years, a Super Bowl appearance, NFC championship appearances, I should say, only 1 actual NFC championship, but took 3 straight 49ers teams to the NFC championship game, took 1 of them to the Super Bowl, and never finished. I mean, his last year they finished 8-8, and that's when he got fired, which was, again, mostly for non-football reasons. There ended up being a power struggle with the front office in 2014. Harbaugh lost that power struggle. And the thing that we have to remember, at least back then, and I'll be interested to see how it plays out now, is the reputation on Harbaugh is that he wore people thin pretty quickly. And that had more to do with him being out in San Francisco than the actual football on the field. And it seems like he has chilled a little bit since then. I mean, he was 50 years old then. He's 60 years old now. Like, he's still quirky and strange, but I don't know that he's quite as grating on the personality. Like, he used to be pretty intense, and I think maybe he's simmered there a little bit. He did last 9 years at Michigan, which was the longest he'd been anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see how that part of it plays out as he returns to the NFL. But as you mentioned, a terrific hire for the Chargers.
It's the sure thing.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a terrific hire, because you look at other teams across the league, right? We'll take the Titans, for example. They just got Brian Callahan.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good hire, but being a coordinator and going to a head coach is unknown. You have the Raiders, who we just got done talking about, and they have Antonio Pierce. You promote an interim to be your guy. That officially happened, right? I'm not crazy, or did I just
I think you may have just assumed. I think you just assumed. I don't know that it's actually happened yet.
Shane,
do we know?
What's the question?
Did Antonio Pierce?
Thanks for listening.
Get
to
the
show.
job.
He's got the job.
Is it locked up?
Does he?
A kid from inner city Los Angeles to be the head coach of a team that he grew up watching, rooting for, cheering for, rocking the colors, rocking the starter jacket.
Yes, that did happen.
And now sitting here doing each.
I'm not crazy.
No,
but when I second guessed myself, I'm like,
just win.
Oh man, I'm a little concerned.
Well, we kind of assumed it was happening for so long
because
that
I wanted it to be him.
Right. Well, and
just win.
When the team kind of signed on the petition and Max Crosby's like, hey, it's Antonio Pierce or I'm out, that kind of forces their hand a little bit. But yeah, that again, he's a risk, right? He hasn't done this job before.
And Jim Harbaugh has less success as a head coach in the NFL. He has obvious success at the college level, and now going back to the NFL, you know what you're getting out of Jim Harbaugh.
He's won
these other ones you
everywhere.
Just don't know.
Yeah.
And if you put Jim Harbaugh in the situation now with a franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert, with good options on the outside if they can stay healthy, Keenan Allen's one of the best receivers if he can stay on the football field. And then their defense is relatively good.
Got good pieces at least.
Yeah, like you have really nice players in like Joey Bosa, Derwin James, right? There's good players on that team. It's just about now taking them to the next level. And we've seen them dip off. Why? Well, Brandon Staley wasn't a good head coach at all.
No.
Again, I don't think they ever should have fired Anthony Lynn. But where they are now is perfect because this team can compete and be a playoff team next season with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
They can. And they will be. And you know what, man? It wouldn't shock me if they overtake the Chiefs. It would not shock me.
It would. I don't know if shock me. I'd be surprised. In year one, I'd be surprised. I think talent-wise, they have everything they need to be really competitive right away. This sounds weird. I still don't know about Justin Herbert from a winning standpoint. He's incredibly talented. He puts up great numbers. Hasn't really won much anywhere he's been. And if anybody can fix
the
that,
only place he's been.
Well, I mean, in college, like Oregon didn't win
Oregon.
anything in here. Like he's always been kind of one of those guys. I watched him at Oregon. I was like, I feel like Oregon should be better with him at quarterback, and they just never were. He's been through, a couple head coaches now. You kind of just look at it and you're like, what? Maybe there's something with him. Maybe not. Maybe it's the head coaching thing. Alex Smith had a situation kind of with, and Alex Smith not nearly as talented, obviously, as Justin Herbert, but had the same situation. Jim Harbaugh came in, boom, they go to NFC Championship game year one. So you're possibly right here, but nobody in that NFC West division had Patrick Mahomes too. So that's where I wouldn't be shocked. I would be surprised.
Well, and the reason I say I wouldn't be shocked is based on how I've seen the Chiefs regular season trajectory go this season. If it were a 13-3 Chiefs team, or I guess
13-4,
it'd be a 4 now.
And
you know, an extra week.
We don't know what Travis Kelce's status is like. He's getting up there,
and if he bounces and the Chiefs don't get any other option
because they need
next
help
to them than Rashee Rice, Patrick Mahomes can't do it.
No, he's got to have guys to throw to.
Travis Kelce caught 2 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah.
If Travis Kelce isn't on the field, Patrick Mahomes isn't throwing 2 touchdowns in that game.
Right. You got to find. So right now, I call this the Tom Brady 06 version of Patrick Mahomes, when they had really no one for him to throw to. 07's when they brought in Moss and they brought in all these weapons, and all of a sudden, boom, this guy takes off, right? Right now, we're in 06 Brady of Patrick Mahomes' career. He's got a couple Super Bowls already. The team is kind of playing with that line of, okay, how much do we really have to pay receivers to still be productive? Because this guy kind of makes everybody look good. Well, I think the Chiefs found out this year with all the drops and the horrible wide receiver play. They're like, okay, we need to pay more than we did this year, right? So I would expect them to spend draft capital, to spend cap space, whatever, on receivers. But you're right. If they don't, and Travis Kelce either retires or he starts to decline a little bit because of his age and the pounding that the tight end position.
Don't be shocked to see the Chargers next season.
I mean, it's not going to be
11 games and that be enough to win that division.
And it might be. 10-11 games seems totally plausible. I just assume that the Chiefs are going to win more than that because of Mahomes, but they only won 11 this year, so it's not crazy. Like I said, I wouldn't be shocked. I would still be surprised, but having Jim Harbaugh is the best possible thing for Justin Herbert. Right? He's got a track record of every single place he's gone of developing quarterbacks. Now, it took a minute at Michigan to find the right guy, but you go all the way back to San Diego. He had Josh Johnson. He got him on the NFL radar, and he's stuck in the league. He was the 49ers emergency backup in the NFC Championship game last year. He's been in the league for like 15 years, right? Not a full-time starter, but to go from the University of San Diego to the league at all is incredible. That's a Jim Harbaugh guy. Obviously, you have Andrew Luck at Stanford. Then you get Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick, 2 NFC Championship games. And then you go to Michigan, you win a national championship with J.J. McCarthy. You made Cade McNamara look like a functional quarterback, which I do not think he is, as we saw at Iowa briefly this year. You know, like that's a guy.
Iowa's just where you go to die.
Yes, again, Iowa is the Raiders of college football.
Of quarterbacks.
Hey, now.
Hey,
everybody's ripping on the Raiders today.
Always. Listen, they wear black. It's the same deal. It's fine. Black and gold, black and silver, same idea. But no,
I don't think so.
Nah, probably not. But Harbaugh is the guy you want if you're trying to get the most out of Justin Herbert. That's the point here.
He's the hot commodity on the market. Like next to Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, it's Jim Harbaugh.
And he's got the track record of doing exactly what the Chargers need him to do. That's maybe the most important part, is he's not just the hottest commodity on the market. He's got the track record. It's kind of like Matt Rule coming to Nebraska. Matt Rule had the track record of exactly what Nebraska needed. Jim Harbaugh has the track record of exactly what Los Angeles needs.
And he's significantly younger, which is crazy to say about a 60-year-old.
Coming up next, we've got John Fanta, Fox Sports basketball analyst here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Paul staying in their zone. Kolick in the corner. Joplin, nobody on
wide
him.
open.
Wide
What's
open
going on?
three.
Holla at your boy. I don't like the hesitation, but
One more time.
holla at your boy.
He's now at 21.
They'll inbound it, the Tigers will, from the baseline. They throw it in. Williams puts it up. It's good, but they're going to wipe it off. He didn't get the shot off in time. And now, let's get out of here. And while we're at it, strike up the band for Ramajamas and a Yay, Alabama. And a 4-point win over the 6th-ranked team in America. And oh, by the way, it's the Auburn Tigers.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We are efforting our friend John Fanta. I know he had a late night last night, but while we wait for him to join us on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, I want to tell you about the Warhorse Festival of Games. Just a few days left to get your entries qualified for the $100,000 prop card challenge and the $20,000 grand prize drawing. You've got until February 1st to get those entries qualified. All you have to do is, number 1, be a Warhorse Rewards member. Number 2, you get an entry for every $50 sportsbook ticket that you place at Warhorse Sportsbook. You have to go to the casino in Lincoln to qualify and to validate your entries. If you've got any questions, concerns, not sure about all the things I just said there, go to warhorsecasino.com for all the information you need. Because listen, there's $100,000 on the line. You go 25 for 25 in that prop card challenge, and you might have yourself $100,000. And if you're like me and you're going to go like probably 12 for 25 on the prop card challenge, you could still win $20,000 in the grand prize drawing. Those entries work for both of those things. So make sure you go check out warhorsecasino.com for more information on the Warhorse Festival of Games.
Which, you mentioned 12 out of 25. That's how I did in the national championship prop challenge. I'm looking back at the card right now, and I'm like, Andrew, why did you say the first offensive play call was going to be a pass? Like, both of these teams would have ran the football.
Listen, you don't always don't always have winners. It's all right. It's okay.
Not the brightest
bulb.
Yeah. Oh,
not the sharpest crayon in the box.
Yeah.
John just landed, by the way, so he'll get with us soon.
And which team will score the longest touchdown? Washington seemed like a true lock.
Oh,
nope. It was
did.
our one of our favorites, Donovan. What's his name?
Edwards.
Edwards.
Yeah,
Thank you. I all I wanted to say was Peoples Jones. What a great last name, Peoples
Jones.
And yeah, he runs 2 of the longest touchdowns in that game. But the prop card was fun to fill out, and it was really fun to follow along with. So I highly recommend people.
Well, and I think we're going to do a little show challenge as well. Maybe we'll see if we can get you some Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill swag. Maybe
did we get some extra entries by chance?
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to check with our friends.
I was looking at some of the messages, and oh shoot, I just marked. I'm trying to find the flagged message. I flagged it on purpose.
But you go to Warhorse Sportsbook and Casino in Lincoln to do that. Or listen, if you're going to hear Brian Edwards later, and you're just like, hey, let's go play some bets. Let's see if we can make a little money on this conference championship weekend. You can still go to Horseman's Park in Omaha, where Warhorse Sportsbook has their betting kiosks here in Omaha. You can still place your regular bets here, but you have to go to Lincoln to qualify and enter into that prop card challenge. I mean, you hope so. Listen, it's okay. You don't.
No, I'm winning.
You're gonna win.
I'm winning.
You're gonna try and go
25 out of 25.
25 or 25.
It's gonna happen.
I want to put the over under at your number here.
At 18.
That you get right. Oh, lower than that. Come on, 18.
Come on,
18's a good number.
Yeah, and it's going to be more.
I'm gonna say 15 and a half.
Oh, I'd hammer the over.
15 and a half.
I mean, after experiencing the national championship prop card, I'm ready.
See, you're going to overcorrect, though. You're going to go in the wrong direction.
Nope. I know NFL more than I know the college game in terms of statistical production. Thank you to fantasy.
Okay.
I'm ready. I'm ready to go. You know what? If I get 20, when I get 20, I think that's a prize. I think I make like some sort of money.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, breakfast for the crew.
All right. If you, I'm trying to think, we should do a little bet here. I'm trying to think of what, because I'll take that 20 number for sure.
I'm getting 20. I'm getting money.
No, here we go.
Breakfast for the show.
Let's do this backwards, right? Okay. If you do get 20, I will buy breakfast for the show.
Okay.
If you don't get 20, then you buy breakfast for the show.
Well, I was hoping to use the money from when I win to buy breakfast for the show. They seem like really good odds for you and really bad odds for me.
Well, no, listen, because if you win, then you got to keep your money.
Yeah, but if it's a lot of money,
I mean,
I don't mind buying breakfast.
You don't have to go like cater in something here. You can just go to McDonald's. And spend
There's going to be like three individuals in white aprons coming in.
White glove service.
Yeah, and they pull off the silver tray, and they're like presenting you with an Egg McMuffin.
We should get some of our teammates here to dress up in like catering garb.
Yeah. And you know what? Brandon's already got the fit going because of his little stash. He's kind of got.
He kind of does have the
chef stash going.
A little bit of a chef stash. He does. I mean, it's really more of a line cook stash than a chef stash.
Yeah, maybe busboy.
Yeah, maybe he's. I don't know if he's quite to chef level yet, but he's definitely got some line cook vibes.
He may have a rat underneath his hat,
he's
helping him
doing
cook.
A little ratatouille. Hello. I don't think that passes health code, by the way.
No, I don't think so.
I would be a little wary about that. As Shane said a minute ago, John's just landing from his flight, so we'll
stand by.
Yeah, we're gonna try and still get him here in this segment. He is.
Do you think John's one of those people that stand up in the aisle like once the plane lands?
Oh, I don't think so.
He seems like an aisle seater.
Yeah, I would think so. I think he probably sits aisle. I hope he's patient.
I bet he's a stander.
You think he is?
Just because I know John's like.
You think he'll antsy?
Yeah, and I think he would stand.
I think it's okay to stand in your seat as long as you don't like push into the aisle.
Yeah, see, so many people went into the aisle, and it made me laugh because, when you're sitting on an airplane and it's just every row, right? And it goes back every row. That's how you exit the plane.
You're not going anywhere.
The most hilarious thing to me is the people that walk from the back of the plane as far up as they can get so that they can get off the plane first. If you wanted to get off the plane first, how about you sit middle seat in row 4 rather than aisle seat in row
20?
34?
Yeah,
exactly. Unbelievable.
I feel you. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, John Fanta. He is, maybe the most recognizable voice of Big East basketball these days. He does college basketball on Fox. Also does some work with the Field of 68, which he did both last night. I heard him on the Seton Hall Providence call, and I see him on Twitter on the Field of 68. John, you're the hardest working man in show business.
It's great to be with you guys. Good morning to you, and thanks for saying that. Hey, we're right in the thick of conference play. I'll get some rest at the Jersey Shore in July. Forget about it. Forget about it right now. There's too much basketball. There's too much basketball to be played.
John, are you somebody that when the plane lands, you stand up in the aisle?
No. So sometimes I'll take a tarmac nap. I'll just go back to sleep, and then maybe get nudged by the flight attendant. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand unless you're in an urgent rush to make the connection.
Mm-hmm.
I just landed down here in North Carolina. I've got a game for CBS Sports Network tonight, and unless you're in a rush to make a connection, or you've really got to use the bathroom, like why are you standing up when there's no movement happening at all? It doesn't. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It'd be like going to McDonald's and ordering a salad. Just sit down and be patient for a couple of moments, and then you're going to be fine. But that's there's no such thing in our world today. Come on.
We're talking with John Fanta. We knew he was a good guy. We knew he wouldn't stand in the aisle.
Shane was over here saying that you were. You were that guy.
I'm not an aisle stander. I really try to stay composed. On this flight, my bag was a couple rows back from my seat because that was the only overhead space that was available. So that's why I'm a couple of minutes late here. But I waited for the people to get off the plane behind me. I got my bag. We were very composed, and then you walk off. So it's we got people shoving and running and doing this, and not everybody's pants are staying up. It's just a nightmare in the airport. You see stuff in the airport that's allowed in an airport that would not be allowed anywhere else.
Unless you went to Walmart.
Unless you went to Walmart at about 10:15 at night.
Yeah. You got to be careful, the Walmart after dark a little bit. But speaking of
true.
Speaking of teams that have kept their composure, Providence, after losing Bryce Hopkins, lost those 4 straight games, including one to Seton Hall at home. They've bounced back. Obviously, they had DePaul, which is DePaul, right? But then they get the big win last night for the game you were on the call for at Seton Hall, a Seton Hall team that until they played Creighton had been playing great basketball. How impressed have you been with Providence and their ability to kind of pivot after the Bryce Hopkins injury?
Well, I was really impressed last night. to me, last night was the most impressive win of Kim English's tenure. Even better than their home win over Marquette or their wild overtime win over Butler. To me, what they showed last night was an ability to punch back when it looks like it's when you're playing at about a C. Last night I would have given through about 25 minutes in that game, I would have given them a C. And yesterday when it shoot around, I think the vibe that I was getting was, well, does this team not have enough? Does this team not have enough? And is that going to prohibit them from making the NCAA tournament? I think it's a natural question when you lose a guy as good as Bryce Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
But Kim English wasn't asking that question. And I thought he showed last night that he can do this job, that he can be the guy at Providence. And we'll see how it evolves long term. But he's 35 years old. You're at the Prudential Center last night. Yes, Seton Hall doesn't have Kadari Richmond, but you guys know, and I'm here to tell you right now, like, even though they lost last night, that Seton Hall team is for real.
Mm-hmm.
They are playing beyond their skis. And last night they started the second half 7 for 8 from the field and built a double-digit lead. Now they just went cold, and that's just it. Providence is second in the Big East in scoring defense, only the UConn. They're top 10 in the country in defensive efficiency. This is a great defensive team. And Devin Carter's playing like a Big East Player of the Year candidate. When they get some shot making from Ticket Games and Jayden Pierre, which he did down the stretch last night, they become tough. But more than anything, they were getting blasted on the glass. They were really getting out rebounded. Seton Hall has surprisingly been a terrific rebounding team this year. And Josh Oduro said, enough is enough. That was an enough is enough win for Providence. It's a great win for them, and it gets them back on the right side of the bubble for now.
John, another team that needs to get on the right side of things is DePaul. And they made a change at their coaching position. But, you know, to get competitive in the conference again, is it about that leadership? Is it about recruiting? Is it the whole operation? How do you get from going from the laughingstock of the league to actually be taken seriously again?
Well, you have to commit the resources and the assets to be a Big East school. You have to up everything that you're doing to be on the same plateau as these other Big East institutions. And sources have told me that DePaul is willing to commit much more money to this coaching search than they have in the past. They have a new university president. His name is Rob Manuel, and Dwayne Peavy, the AD at DePaul, who fully swung and missed in his first search. Now, I want to make this clear to the people out there who say an AD makes the hire. An AD works with a search firm to get a candidate pool list.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, those candidates walk into a boardroom and those candidates walk in front of a president. And if the president or the board says to the athletic director, I don't want to hire this guy, the athletic director's not hiring him because the athletic director answers to those people. So to that point, this is really interesting. I think that DePaul now, for the first time in perhaps 20, 25 years, the reason why I believe that DePaul could get this on a better track now is the president of the university trusts his AD. Mm. The AD's been able to sell the president and the school on the fact that if athletics wins, you win. And I know a lot of people might also roll their eyes and say, well, how do people not get that? Let me tell you something. There are some schools across the country that, and football schools, mm-hmm. that an AD can go to their school and say, you know, our basketball matters too. And the board will say, no, it doesn't. Just get an 8 or 9 seed and we'll take it from there. Like, we don't need to commit more than we already are committing. You go and, you know, you're fine being a middle tier. You've got to have commitment. You've got to have competency in those leadership positions. DePaul has not had that. They have not had that in a very long time. So they're going to be able to commit more money than you would think. I think they could be committing in the neighborhood of $3 million a year, which gets them in a much, much, much better place here. But they've got work to do to field these candidates, to get the right candidates. But they are going to get a guy who's been a college head coach. There is no question in my mind. They will not get an assistant making his move up. They're not going to. I don't think they're going to be stuck in this situation. I really do believe that they're going to get a notable name here who's trying to prove something at a next opportunity. But more than anything, Tony Stubblefield is unemployed right now because Dwayne Peavy, the AD at DePaul, has people lined up to give NIL. But during the holidays, when he called those people, they said, I'm not giving to this current regime. You got to show me that you actually care.
We're talking with John Fanta. He covers college basketball, calls college basketball for Fox Sports, also does some work for the Field of 68. John, as I'm looking around the Big East and we see, obviously UConn at the top of that hill, is there any weaknesses in the UConn armor right now? We're talking about the bottom of the league in DePaul, switching all the way to the top of the league now with UConn. Is there anything you've seen you're like, hey, this is where somebody might be able to get them?
Man, maybe somebody should mess with Dan Hurley's yoga schedule because I don't know. I mean, I'm waiting for some. I guess it's Hurley versus the refs. That's the only thing that could cause them to have a hiccup. No, I mean, here's the thing. If Tristan Newton stays healthy for this team and stays in the rhythm he's been in, they're going to be very difficult to beat. You've got to crack that code. It's not Klingon. It's not Caravan. It's not Spencer. It's not even Stephon Castle. Like, they have players. They've got weapons guys. They've got great players. Yeah, they're UConn. They're going to have great players.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, they won a national championship last year because their point guard was phenomenal. And Tristan, like, if I'm putting a Big East Player of the Year list together right now, he's got to be there because to the best team, I typically give the best awards to.
Mm-hmm.
If you've won, and he's their most important player because he's the point guard. He's the guy who steers the ship. How many times have you guys seen the last 2 years shot clocks winding down?
Mm-hmm.
UConn needs someone to make a play or make a shot. And this kid is a dead-eye shooter off the dribble, like drilling threes that are from way downtown at the college level. I think that's it. I mean, I think that is if you're going to find a way through this armor, you got to get Newton to have an off night, because if he's stirring the drink, Caravan and Spencer are going to hit, catch, and shoot threes. In the first 5 games of Big East play in the new year, Caravan and Spencer combined to shoot 30 for 50 from 3. Like, they're incredible shot makers, but you gotta shut down the point guard. You gotta beat him. Klingon's really good. He's talented, but he's still figuring things out off that foot injury. To me, it's just how many ways they can beat you from the perimeter. When they hit a 3, it feels like 4 or 5 points. You gotta contain Newton.
John, this is going to be my last question as we're running out of time. Do you want it to be Creighton focused or Nebraska focused?
Ooh, Creighton focused.
All right. How concerning was Creighton's loss to UConn for you with how lopsided that game ended up? Do you think it was just a fluke night for the Jays, or do you think what you saw is what you'll see again in February when these teams meet again?
No, there's no way we're going to see that again. No, zero chance. Just because Greg McDermott's too good of a coach to get embarrassed twice. That was just a bad night. Now, there are elements of it that we're going to see more of the same of. Here's the thing. Creighton, to me, heading into the year, was a Final Four candidate. Today, I would tell you guys, Sweet 16 caliber team. And once you get to the Sweet 16, you throw the ball up.
Mm-hmm.
They can make the Elite Eight, because if you make the Sweet 16, of course you can freaking make the Elite Eight. When people are like, no, they'll make the second weekend, then they'll bow out. Well, how the heck do you know who they're playing? Last year, Creighton played Princeton in the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get lucky a little bit in March too, and it's not to take away anything from last year's Creighton team at all. But they played a Baylor team that didn't play any defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They went on in the Sweet 16. They played a Princeton team that had a magical run, but they were better then. So here's the thing: Creighton. The issue I have with them is 2 things. One, depth. Mm-hmm. I mean, if this big three isn't doing it, then how are they getting production? And two, speed. Mm-hmm. They just don't have they don't have this great ability to take you off the bounce and go to the basket. They don't have that guy who could put the ball on the floor and just race past you. And Stephen Ashworth's getting a lot of criticism. He's doing what he can. I actually think he's gotten better. He's their most offensively efficient player. Shireman and Alexander have to knock down shots for this team to be successful. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because the thing for me is last year Creighton could win plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. They could win. They could beat you in like 10 different ways. This team can beat you in about 3 to 5 different ways. When one of those ways is cooking, they're really cooking. They're that good. But if you stop Alexander or Shireman, and if you really limit Shireman, you're going to win.
We're talking with John Fanta. He does play-by-play for Fox. He does commentary for Fox and for Field of 68
does it all.
And everywhere else. He's going to be on. What's the game you're on tonight in North Carolina on CBS Sports Network?
5 Eastern time, CBS Sports Network. Join us for some bingo hour hoops. You know, we're just in time. I'm running into my grandma's dinner, but, you know, hopefully somebody can watch.
What's the matchup tonight?
5 o'clock. It's Campbell and Elon in the Coastal Athletic Association. So I'm en route to Bowie's Creek, North Carolina.
Whew. Either of these teams, potential March upset teams, John.
Neither one of them are. But you know what? Neither one of them are. But I always say in college basketball, what makes me love this sport is that 2 teams in America can go out and play, and you could see the wildest game you've ever seen because that's what college hoops delivers.
Amen. There we go. That's our guy, John Fanta. John, we appreciate your time so much. Enjoy your time in North Carolina. Maybe stop by High Point and say hi to our old friend Alan Huss for us while you're out there.
Appreciate you guys. Have a great day, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, John.
That's John Fanta. He covers college basketball for Fox Sports, for CBS Sports, as he said tonight, and, of course, the Field of 68, the busiest man in the business. We appreciate John's time.
We will be back.
You just mentioned all those accomplishments and the big person's table. Would you want to add winning a Super Bowl to that?
I just want to enjoy this. And I hope you give me that, you know. Can a guy have that? Does it always have to be, you know, what's next? What's the future? You know, like I said the other day, I hope to have a future. That was everything, you know. It was just, you know, that last phase line, that last one more game, you know, and we won it. And it was such a one-track mind for our entire football team. I just love it. That was one of our goals, you know, win the next game. To have completed them all, you know, win the big games, win the Big Ten championship, you know, win the Rose Bowl.
You just mentioned all those accomplishments.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You just mentioned all those accomplishments and the big person's table. Would you want to add winning a Super Bowl to that?
I just want to enjoy this. And I hope you give me that, Can a guy have that? Does it always have to be, what's next? What's the future? Like I said the other day, I hope to have a future.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can join us there. Or, like our next guest, Anthony Broom from the Wolverine on 3, you can join us on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Anthony, how are you this morning?
I am so tired
and busy, right?
It has been quite a run these last several weeks, but maybe closure isn't the word I would use, but some finality. Like there is a path forward now.
Anthony, I don't feel bad for you. You guys won a national title. I don't feel bad for you.
Yeah, no. This I'm not looking for any sympathy at all. Just that's where we're at.
Anthony, how much of I guess from the outside looking in, at least from my perspective, it seemed kind of like an inevitability that Jim Harbaugh would be moving on to the NFL this year. Was that the sense kind of inside the program as well? I mean, it seems like they were reasonably well prepared for this, as it seems like they've really zeroed in on Sharon Moore as being that next guy up. But I guess what was the vibe inside the building in terms of what they thought Jim Harbaugh's future would be?
Yeah, it did feel different this time. And something I've said before is that, even though it might seem like this is it and the NFL could be on the horizon, you always got to be careful because a lot of things with Jim Harbaugh never play out to its logical conclusion. But, I'd be lying if I said even before, the sign stealing stuff. I mean, there was the Burgergate scandal, as it was coined up here. It did kind of start to feel like there was like a last dance type of vibe to all of this, given that, Harbaugh had the 2 years of, before this where there was an NFL courtship. Obviously, he had, his most loaded roster yet, and a lot of those guys are going to wind up leaving. It did feel like that no matter what wound up happening this year, that there was a really good chance it was the closing of one chapter and maybe the beginning of something else. So not really surprised it wound up this way. I mean, really, this is the most basic and straightforward thing that could have happened. The second that Chargers job opened, everyone was kind of like, well, that's the one to keep an eye on because, you have Justin Herbert. I know they have some cap issues, but, anyone who follows the NFL knows the salary cap isn't real. You can get around that. So it's like, I think it's a good situation, and I think he'll win there. And I think that's what he wanted to do. He originally, gave Michigan 7 years and said, after 7 years, I think I might like to go back and explore this. And obviously he stayed for 9. And there were some bumps along the way. There was some glory and some confetti along the way as well. But sitting here today, I can't really say I'm surprised the way any of it went.
Anthony, is the assumption that it's pretty much locked up, but because you have to wait like a certain amount of days with the university, that Sharon Moore is going to be the next head coach?
Yeah, I mean, if I was in charge of a sports book or something, I wouldn't even post odds on it. It's going to be Sharon Moore. Yeah, I'd be stunned if something happened where that wasn't the case. There's a state law up here in Michigan where apparently, as a public institution, the job has to be posted for 7 days. I think they're trying to get some kind of waiver to get that pushed through. I think you can do that citing like business purposes or damage to your business, whatever it is. But, now when you look around college football, 7 days is a long time, especially when you've got, look at what happened at Washington, Alabama. Some of these schools were, the second that move becomes official, that you haven't, your head coach is leaving, those guys have 30 days to hop into the portal. So I don't expect a lot of that. I don't really expect that to happen with this group at Michigan. I think most players on this team that decided to come back or that had decisions to make kind of knew what they were signing up for. It's kind of been assumed that it would be Jim or Sharon next year. But, if it's anyone but Sharon Moore, something wild has happened because I think all boats are sailing that direction right now.
We're talking with Anthony Broom. He covers Michigan for thewolverine.com. That's part of the On3 network. Anthony, do you think that's the right direction for Michigan to go? It seems like they zeroed in on Sharon Moore extremely quickly. Doesn't really seem like they ever explored other options. Has this kind of just been the plan that's been in place since there were some previous flirtations with the NFL for Jim Harbaugh? Or I guess, how did it become such a foregone conclusion that Sharon Moore is the guy? And do you think they maybe should have cast a wider net?
Yeah, timing is part of it too. If this had been something that happened, let's just say Michigan doesn't make the playoff and there was a decision to make in December, I think you can cast a wider net and go after like Kalen DeBoer or some of these other guys. But I think regardless, they've kind of been locked in on Sharon. Now, this is a much different situation. If this had been 2 years ago where, Jim Harbaugh gets on a plane, goes to Minnesota, expects to take that job. Mm-hmm. And then you're sitting there going, wow, okay, we don't really know if they have his successor here. Well, given the passage of time, I think Sharon Moore has obviously earned this opportunity. He coached Michigan for 4 games this year as the head coach, 2 of them being wins over Penn State and Ohio State. I think he's ready for this. I think that Jim knew when he left, he would want it to be Sharon. I think Michigan wants it to be Sharon. I think that over the last few years, you've really kind of seen him become Jim Harbaugh's right-hand man. And I think he's ready for it. And, it was always kind of assumed that Sharon's going to be a head coach somewhere. He could have there was a couple Power 5 jobs that did kick the tires on him last year, but he, was going to be selective and didn't necessarily know if Michigan would be the option or not. But I do think that he's ready for it. I think he's equipped for it. And I think that, things are operationally going to look different. You don't just plug him in and say, here you go. But I think he's pretty clearly the choice. And I think he's earned that opportunity. And that's the best it's the best for them to kind of keep this window they have open now. And we'll see what things look like a few years from now. But this is the best option for them. It really is.
Anthony, is there any coach out there that even though you think Sharon's the best option, and that's fine, is there anybody out there that you just kind of wonder about, like, that might be interesting?
If in a world where Nick Saban didn't retire, I think Kalen DeBoer would have probably been at the top of that list for me.
Sure.
Other than that, it's tough to say because everyone. This is the thing. Even we learned with Jim Harbaugh is that just because you make a home run hire doesn't guarantee you anything. People forget. The first 6 years of the Jim Harbaugh era, they hadn't beaten Ohio State, they hadn't won the Big Ten, and that's this thing was kind of teetering because of that. It's always fun to play the name game and see. Again, the Brian Kelly stuff was always. It sounded like to me Brian Kelly and his representation trying to get a raise. A lot of people. That's the other thing too, is that Michigan's being swift enough with this where I don't know that a lot of the names that you might hear pop up, that might just be representation for people trying to get their guy a few extra dollars in his pocket. So, yeah, I can't really, off the top of my head, I can't really say who a name would be. Again, in a multiversal scenario, DeBoer would have been that guy, but
sure, coming back to the Midwest.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, we got about a minute left here. Because people talk within a program, do you think J.J. McCarthy going to the draft was maybe a whisper after knowing that Jim Harbaugh wasn't going to be the coach again next season? Like, were those moves connected at all?
It's possible. I think when you look at J.J. McCarthy, I think as an NFL draft prospect, I think a lot of the things that you might hear scouts say he needs to improve on are things that he could only get better at by being in the NFL. So I think, when you're a guy like that, 27-1 as a starter, you won a national title. You've really, I know the numbers aren't gaudy, but when you throw on the film, you saw a guy that did take a big step forward this year. I think it was time for him from his perspective. Maybe NIL kept him around Michigan a little longer in a different scenario. But I will say this, when they had their championship celebration about a week or so ago, it did feel like both Harbaugh and JJ were going, and that's ultimately what happened.
Anthony Broom from the Wolverine.com, part of the On3 Network. Anthony, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully one of these days Michigan will let you sleep a little bit.
No, I know what I signed up for.
That's
Thanks,
Anthony Broom from the Wolverine. We appreciate your time. Anthony Broom from the Wolverine.com. That's part of the On3 Network. Coming up next, our guy Brian Edwards trying to make some money.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Now, Vegas insider, senior handicapper, and fan of the cold Budweiser bottles, Brian Edwards.
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Brian Edwards.
I don't really love it.
Brian Edwards.
Were they using the cream cheese to butter the bagel?
Brian Edwards.
I'm going with the cowgirl.
Here is Brian Edwards.
Welcome back as we wrap up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are joined now on the War Horse Sportsbook hotline by our guy, Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. B, how are you this morning?
Good morning, fellas. What's happening? I'm doing well.
It's good to see you, B.
We are doing well. It is, it's like a balmy 35 here in Omaha, Nebraska. We're feeling great. It's like 60 degrees warmer than the last time we talked to you.
Nice. It's gotten a little warmer here as well. I'm not sure what it's supposed to do this weekend.
I don't want to know what the temperature is. It's just going to make me sad.
What are you moving up from 50 to 60 actually there?
I'm happy with my 35 degrees. Do not ruin this for me.
We had some 20s action last week, and I had to drip faucets, the whole deal.
It's hard out here. It's hard out here for our guy B. Edwards. Brian, let's start looking ahead to the NFC and AFC Conference Championship weekend. Baltimore is a favorite over Kansas City. That line has moved around a little bit. Where do you like it at?
Okay, so I like Baltimore if you can get 3, but I see DraftKings is still at 3.5. Caesars is still at 3.5. Most are at 4 though. If you can buy the half point to 3, if they're making you pay like more than minus 130, never mind. So the reason why I like Baltimore if it's at 3, they've just been absolute money at home. Now, I don't really count the regular season finale when they lost to Pittsburgh because Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham and Roquan Smith, et cetera, rested because they had the number 1 seed wrapped up. But, other than that, they have just been, dominating teams at home with the exception of that Rams game. where they, obviously had to go to OT. But if we take out that regular season finale against Pittsburgh, they're 11-1 straight up, 9-3 against the spread in their last 12, and all 11 wins have been by at least 6, and 8 of those wins by double digits. And Kansas City's got they've got a couple of injuries. It looks like Baltimore's going to get Marlon Humphrey and Mark Andrews back, and I like Baltimore -3 if you can get that. I will say, I believe the number on Mahomes is now, I believe it's 10-2-1 against the spread with 9 outright wins as an underdog. So at 3.5 or 4, I can't lay that to Mahomes. But I also like the over, which is 44 or 48, 4.5. Now, we're still a good ways out, but it looks like we're going to get a lot of rain. But you know what? Lamar Jackson and Mahomes can scramble, defenders slipping, we get fumbles, set up short fields, et cetera, et cetera. I kind of just have the same approach as I did with the over on KC Buffalo last week. I trusted Mahomes and Allen, and I trust in this game Mahomes and Jackson are going to make enough plays. And I will also note that in the 4 Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes meetings with Baltimore KC, combined scores 71, 54, 61, and 51. So I like the over, and I like Baltimore if you can get -3.
B, you mentioned Mark Andrews being back. Excuse me. Isaiah Likely anytime touchdown is on your prop card. If Mark Andrews is back, how do you see Likely's production going down, and why do you like no pun intended, the +325 there?
Well, they run a lot of 2 tight end sets, so even if Andrews is back, likely he's going to still be involved. And he scored he scored 6 touchdowns in the last 6 games, but he scored a touchdown in 5 of the last 6 games. So +325. I'm just talking small change on that. And then I also like Lamar Jackson's rushing yards prop over 63.5. Now, I will concede he's only gone over that 4 times in 17 games this year. Because he missed the regular season finale and played last week. So 17 games, he's been over it 4 times. But 100 yards last week. It's a one and done scenario. He's going to be running it more. And I think, with it raining, getting out of the pocket, he'll be more likely to scramble than throw. And I just, maybe defender slipping or Lamar Jackson just showing his greatness. I'll take over 63.5.
I'll take it. We're talking with Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. Going over to the NFC Championship game. Detroit is about a touchdown dog to San Francisco. How do you see that one?
Yeah, I got to go with Detroit here. I thought San Francisco was extremely fortunate to survive last week. Detroit is 6-3 straight up, 7-2 against the spread in 9 road games. But we all remember they got hosed at Dallas. It should be, it should be 7-2 straight up and against the spread in my mind. San Fran's only 3-6 against the spread at home. And Dan Campbell's squad has won 3 in a row and 5-1 straight up at ATS in the last 6. And the only game they lost outright was the Dallas game. Debo's questionable. I guess we'll know more, here in the next 48 hours or so. But when they were without Debo this year, they went 0-2, but straight up and ATS. And I think we've got the quarterback advantage. I think Goff is playing terrific football right now in the last 9 games, 17-4 TDI-INT ratio. I'll take the Lions plus the 7.
B, as you look ahead at some of the lines FanDuel released for the Super Bowl, what stands out to you right away as, man, if it could be these 2 teams because of X and YZ value, I want it to be this matchup?
All right, well, let me throw the lines at you real quick for all 4, and I'll tell you the one that I would take now. So San Fran is -1.5 to the Ravens, total of 47.5. Baltimore is -4.5 to the Lions, total of 49. Niners are -3 at only -102 juice to Kansas City, +3 -120. That total is 47.5. And then KC is -3.5 to Detroit. Remember, that would be a week 1 rematch, which Detroit won at Arrowhead. That total is 50.5. The only one I would really want to take right now would be the Ravens plus 1.5 to the Niners. That would be the one I would play. The other three, I would just have to see how the teams play and get out with the injuries. But I would take Ravens plus 1.5 to the Niners right now.
We're talking with Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. As you, how do you kind of land on some of these props? I know you mentioned kind of the Lamar Jackson factor. You mentioned Mark Andrews on some of his props. Do you kind of pick your side first and then go from there to see where you see value, or how do you kind of land on some of these?
Well, I mean, like for last week, like I think the only prop I did was Josh Allen over 42.5 rushing yards. He had just had a big, I think it was 3 of the previous 4 games. He had big rushing yards games. And I was just, thinking that one and done scenario playoffs, not just trying to stay healthy in September or October during the regular season, that he'd be taken off more. And I guess I'm kind of thinking along those same lines with Lamar Jackson. I haven't completely evaluated like all the props, just as busy with hoops. I'll probably do a little more of that later in the week. Like I kind of just had a few guys during the regular season. Like when AJ Brown was really going, he had like, I think it was 108 receiving yards, like 5 or 6 games in a row. I've tailed that like 4 or 5 weeks in a row. I did a lot of the Kyle Pitts overs just because his numbers were so low and they were successful. Now it was sketch city a lot of weeks because never throwing the ball, but got a couple of them there in the fourth quarter, but I also got a couple like in the first half. I was just doing Kyle Pitts because it was like mid-30s, and I'm like, man, he can have a 45-yard catch anytime. So I mean, I don't even imply by any means I'm an expert in the prop market. I'm starting to get into it a little more. I guess it's just taking the guys that you're familiar with, you think you're going to have big games, and then analyzing their numbers. But again, with the Lamar Jackson thing this week, I think you throw out the numbers because the quarterback's trying to stay healthy September, October, November. Right now, it doesn't matter.
I was struggling. We got about a minute and a half here. I was crafting up some props for the weekend too, and I saw the play that you had for Lamar, so that's in one of my parlays. But I was looking at Kelsey's number, and Prize Picks was giving me 40 receiving yards for Travis Kelce. And I was talking to a buddy yesterday, and I'm like, he has to get 40 receiving yards or else this team will get completely
blown
smoked,
out. Yeah.
Right? Like would you look at Travis Kelce at 40 receiving yards and think that's a lock, add it in?
Yeah. Where are you seeing that number? I don't think that number's right.
So it's on Prize Picks.
Is there odds on the over, or they're like you have to pay like a big price on the over?
No, they just they shift it from like, I don't know what his actual total is. It's probably somewhere around 60. But
okay, yeah, I would love it over 40. Yeah, 100%. But I don't think that's a number. I feel like I saw it in the 60s. So I see.
That's definitely not the number of like that every sportsbook has it set.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
But this is just like a value pick.
Oh yeah, I would love it over 40. I don't know about the real number in the 60s. I'm not sure. He's had 75 and 71 the last 2 games.
That's Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. You can find him at vegasbedwards.com, at majorwager.com, or at brianedwardsports.com. B, we appreciate your time as always. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, fellas. Y'all have a great weekend.
CB.
That's our guy, Brian Edwards, Vegas insider.
Right
coming.
there.
Oof. 39.5. Man, get a little value there. We get some more value talking to Michael Bruntz coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this third hour, KFOR in Lincoln. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We were talking earlier about our friends at the Omaha Supernovas. They kicked off, served off their season last night.
Tipped off, kicked off, and then served off.
I was like, I don't think that either of those are right. I don't think served off is right either. Started off their season last night with a 5-set thriller that they ultimately lost against the Atlanta Vibe. You can see them in action again in Omaha on February 3rd. That's a week from this Saturday back at CHI Health Center against the San Diego Mojo. Go to supernovas.com for more information and for single game and season tickets. Let's see if we can beat that 11,006 number. I think we can, because I believe in you folks and I believe in the Omaha Supernovas. And I believe that you'll see the best volleyball talent you've ever seen on one floor. NCAA champions, All-Americans, and Olympians. We saw the movement last night with 11,600 strong in CHI Health Center. Let's keep that movement going on February 3rd when your Omaha Supernovas take the court once again. Joining us now, our friend from Husker 24/7, Michael Bruntz. Bruntsy, how are you this morning?
Not bad. What's going on?
Hey, Bruntsy.
Hey.
Oh, we're just having a good time here, talking a little professional volleyball today, talking a little Jim Harbaugh. just having lots going on for a January.
Yeah, it's what's the slowest sports month do you guys think? Is it May? Is it July?
July. I was going to say July. Yeah.
I don't know. May's pretty slow.
But if you wanted to, and I know you don't, but if you wanted to, you could talk NBA playoffs. You could talk NHL playoffs. You can talk baseball.
You can do that in June.
Not in July. We said July.
Yeah,
June.
I said May. I said May is pretty slow.
Yeah, and I said July was slower because you don't have NBA. You don't have NHL. College World Series is done here. You're not quite to NFL football camp. July is the desert of sports talk radio.
I love baseball. I'm good, man.
Do you remember like the 3 days back when Sports Center actually showed highlights and stuff? That way back in the day.
Is that the new when MTV used to show music videos when ESPN
Basically,
used to show highlights?
they're kind of like arm in arm, I think. But do you remember the 3 days around the All-Star break? It would just be there was nothing on ESPN those 3 days. It was the worst. You'd wake up in the morning and there's just nothing. I always hated that as a kid.
Lots of home run derby coverage, lots of softball game coverage.
Softball game.
Bill Nye the Science Guy legging out a double.
Don't forget about media days. I mean, that's it. Yeah, baseball and media days.
Do people watch those media days?
In July, we have to. There's nothing else going on. Bruntz, speaking of baseball real quick, tomorrow college baseball practice gets started. How pumped are you?
Very. I'm excited. That means spring's around the corner. It's like a sign of spring, right? It's UPS guys breaking out the shorts. It's the snap of the glove. Everybody's tomorrow's a great day. Everybody's 0-0. Everybody's healthy, feeling good. So it's I'm excited.
Now, Bruntz, stay there with baseball before we jump into football because, Husker Athletics has seen a strong uptick in talent lately. Football gets Dylan Raiola. Softball gets Jordy Ball. Volleyball always recruits high-level athletes and transfers. Women's basketball gets Britt Prince. In order to be playing in Omaha someday again, how do you feel about Coach Bolt's team right now heading into spring? And who are we possibly sleeping on if there are any of those giant, I don't even want to just call them recruits or transfers that are either in the program today or being brought in?
Well, I mean, if you're just going off of rankings and, who was kind of pursuing players, Drew Christo. I mean, he's that kind of guy. He was a top 150 recruit, I think, out of Elkhorn, and I think he's going to be an early storyline for this team. I mean, I think he came in with a lot of because of that ranking, a lot of expectation that he hasn't lived up to through 2 seasons, and Nebraska has to find starting pitching options on Friday and Saturday nights, and I think he's going to get the shot to do it. I mean, he's a big physical pitcher, throws mid-90s and, has developed a pretty nice breaking pitch to go with it. So I would probably go there in terms of just guys that, that are kind of that name that people should know. This team, I think, is going to be a little bit more, maybe not lacking star power isn't the right word, but I think they're going to be a lot more balanced than what they've been in the past. I mean, you had 2 guys last year that in Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews that I would put among the people that you just mentioned, Andrew. But I think kind of out of the gates, the 2 that I would say are Drew Christo and then Dylan Carey, who was the top player in Colorado out of high school, and I think has the potential to be a breakout star this year for Nebraska.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntz, before we move on from baseball, what do you think is realistic for Nebraska, both in terms of talent acquisition and expectations for the program in the Big Ten, and how much, if at all, does that change with the addition of the 4 West Coast teams next year?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see how that works out. I mean, I think they have to. I think the conference has to be smart about how they bring those 4 teams in, and I think there's an opportunity to kind of raise the profile of the conference. I mean, I know that the new Big Ten commissioner Tony Petitti's been more involved with with Big Ten baseball meetings than any of his predecessors. He's a former, Major League Baseball executive, so he actually understands the sport. I think that helps. I think, there's an opportunity if the Big Ten wants to do it to expand the number of teams that you put in the tournament, in the conference tournament. I think you can get creative with scheduling earlier in the year to kind of take advantage of the fact that you have 2 teams in Southern California. So I think there's a real opportunity there. And UCLA has been good for a long time. USC's getting better. They've been kind of the Nebraska football almost of college baseball the last 20 years. And Oregon and Washington are consistently good too. So I think it's kind of an arrow up situation for Big Ten baseball. And I think, since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten, I think Nebraska kind of helped push forward a lot of the kind of growth in the conference that they've had so far. And I think there's another opportunity to take that next step with these 4 teams coming in.
Bruntz, Nebraska signed 29 high school players in December and added 6 transfers out of the transfer portal. There's ones we know a lot about and a good amount we don't. Let's lean toward the good amount we don't here. Who's one Nebraska fans should know more about in terms of making the earliest impact at their position, or maybe it's the importance of early development for that player? Who's a player that we just don't know enough about that fits that criteria?
Yeah, I mean, I think if, you've kind of been paying attention, but not a guy that's kind of flown under the radar a little bit is Ja'Cory Barney. Unfortunately, was the kid that went viral for falling on the ice
and dropped his smoothie.
I felt bad, that I've done that. I mean, I did it yesterday. It happens to everybody. I mean, dude, it happens.
It's a rite of passage.
My back still hurts.
Yeah. So, but I think he's somebody that people need to kind of keep in mind. I mean, I think when you kind of look at positions where Nebraska is going to be looking really hard at younger guys to kind of come in and play, wide receiver is one of them. I mean, it's a tough position to learn if you're not on campus early. I think that Ja'Cory Barney probably gets overlooked a little bit because he kind of had a no drama recruitment, which Nebraska beats out Miami, his hometown school, for him. He never wavers. He plays quarterback, running back, wide receiver for his high school team the last 2 years. And I think he's a guy that Nebraska staff really feels like they got to steal there out of South Florida. So I think he's a guy to know. Kind of, when guys commit late in the process too, I'll give you one on defense. Vincent Shavers, another Florida kid, goes up to the last weekend of the recruiting process, committed to Miami, visits Nebraska, flips to Nebraska, wins defensive MVP in an all-star game down in Miami of basically the top players in the region. And if you watch his highlights, he just kind of has that extra gear when he's rushing the quarterback that it kind of makes you take notice. And, I think what we saw last year with Nebraska is that Matt Rule and his staff are willing to take advantage of somebody's tools. Like if a guy can get after the quarterback, James Williams is a good example of this, who comes from nowhere on the scout team, and all of a sudden he's in there on third downs getting after the quarterback. I'm not saying that Vincent Shavers is going to do that, but he has the kind of skills, and with being on campus early, to put on some weight, to go through strength and conditioning and all that stuff that everybody else does. But he's one that I'm at least intrigued to see a little bit more on the field, just because the way his recruitment happened, it was really late. He basically visited and committed within a span of about 72 hours and then signed. So he's somebody that has my attention as well.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. So looking at the early enrollees, obviously quarterback gets all the attention for the early enrollees, and for good reason. Both of Nebraska's freshman quarterbacks are early enrollees. You mentioned some of the challenges at wide receiver. You mentioned Vincent Shavers maybe being able to put some weight on. We haven't really talked about the offensive linemen enrolling early yet. Outside of that quarterback room, where do you think it will most benefit some of the guys coming in early? Is it guys like on the lines where they need to physically mature, or maybe places like wide receiver or defensive back where they maybe need to get their mind right for the college level?
Well, I mean, I generally look at linemen coming in, especially offensive linemen, like you get such a huge benefit from going through that first winter conditioning and kind of getting that process started of adding weight, reshaping your body, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's so huge for those guys to kind of have that extra time. Grant Bricks enrolling early. I mean, that was a decision that he was really kind of wrestling back and forth with. And, he's a developmental prospect with a really high ceiling, and you're going to get the opportunity to go through the strength and conditioning program this winter, get adjusted to just going against, having to block Nash Hutmacher and having to block Ty Robinson. I mean, you're not at Logan Magnolia there anymore, having to deal with those guys. So there's a lot of benefit for him and Gibson Pyle and those guys coming in early. I think, I'm eager to see what the 2 deep looks like once we get to like August on that offensive line, because, last year you had Gunnar Gatula on there as a true freshman at one of the tackle spots. You had Sam Sledge working his way at one of the guard spots. I don't know if it's going to skew that young this year. But I guess back to your original question, I just think there's a little bit more benefit to linemen to kind of get that process started and kind of start developing. And, I think when you talk about corners, I mean, that's maybe one that we're not talking about enough with Buford and Larry Tarver coming in, but they kind of have the same thing. I mean, you're a cornerback in high school. You're kind of the top dog. You're used to going against, wide receivers that are about your size and that thing. And then, all of a sudden you're having to line up across from, like an Isaiah Nair, who's every bit of 6'3", 6'4", 210 pounds and is like 5 years older than you. I mean, there's an adjustment to make there too. So I think guys, you can say whatever you want about guys finishing out their senior year and having that experience and blah, blah, blah. But if you want to kind of get that process started, I mean, that first semester is huge. And you look at the guys that played as true freshmen this year for Nebraska, a lot of those guys were here in the spring and going through things early.
Bruntz, do you think a guy like Grant Bricks, who obviously with his caliber of recruit, a lot of times we think, okay, those are maybe guys that could get on the field early. But as you mentioned, he's also kind of a developmental prospect, even with that high star rating. Do you think he's maybe a redshirt candidate for this year? Maybe they try and get him in the 4 games, but they'd like to preserve that extra year of eligibility for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the idea, is that he'll redshirt and kind of use this year to grow. Like I said earlier, I mean, I think the picture is a little bit more crowded at offensive line, along the offensive line, than what it was last year. I mean, I was trying to think back the other day. They were almost down to like 10 or 12 scholarship linemen last year, this time, just because of injuries and everything else. And, this year you've got a lot of 6-year guys coming back. You bring in Micah Mazuka at one of the guard spots. I mean, I think it's probably trending to where Grant Bricks, is maybe not needed in some ways, unless he kind of comes out and just kind of blows the doors off everybody. But, I think a lot of times with high school linemen making the transition to college football, there's a learning curve that kind of comes with pass blocking. And I think that's the case with Bricks, just based on the style of offense he ran in high school. And, that's the benefit of having 15 more practices in the spring to learn that stuff. But, I know at least with Bricks, just a tremendously high ceiling. And, a guy that's been good at everything he's ever done his whole life. I mean, he's a really dialed in kid. Shaper went out to one of his high school games, and during halftime he's a drum major leading the band. So he's definitely used to succeeding. But I think it's probably more a situation where he's just learning a little bit further down on the depth chart.
Bruntz, we know Coach Rule is a standard setter. How have you seen weekends like the last and the one upcoming become an example of the new standard under Coach Rule? Like, how have you seen things change under his leadership from either the ones that came before and even from his evolution from year 1 to year 2?
In terms of recruiting?
Yeah, in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you've seen is, you're seeing the staff kind of catch up a little bit. I mean, I think what maybe gets lost, with the recruiting conversation and as it kind of relates to new staffs, you get hired and you just have like a dead sprint to the finish line that first class. So that to me was the 23 class, and everybody assumes, okay, well, new class, you're caught up, you're ready to kind of hit the ground running. And I still think, in that second class, just with the way that a lot of recruitments are nowadays, you're still kind of playing catch up. You're trying to evaluate, figure out where you are, where you need to go, like in your region, recruiting wise, that kind of stuff. Figure out what you have on your roster and what works and what doesn't. And they had a great class in 24. But I still think, that you're kind of like honing what you know. And I think you're seeing in the 25 and even the 26 class, a much better idea of what they're looking for, a better, stronger relationships with recruits earlier in their recruitment, which I think matters. And, I think the blueprint though for them, and you've seen it this last couple of weekends with who they've offered and who they've brought on campus, it's going to start, in this region. It's going to start locally. A lot of, talented local kids were on campus this past week, and they're going to have more this coming week as well. And they're going to build with that, and then they're going to bring in skill guys and fill, from Texas and Florida and different places. And I think, the message that they're giving to recruits is that, the foundation's been set, and now they're kind of ready to, take that next step as a program. We'll see if that happens, but that's the message they're sending. And from talking to recruits this past weekend, I think it was pretty well received.
Bruntz, are you surprised at all? Maybe surprised isn't the right word, but has there been any sort of attention that you've paid to how far ahead this staff is working? I mean, I think I saw an offer go out to a 2027 class quarterback. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the fourth that they've put out to a 2027 quarterback.
Is that, in your experience, at least covering Nebraska recruiting, like, is that unusual to be working that far ahead? It didn't seem like previous staffs were maybe quite as forward thinking as this staff is.
Yeah, I think at the quarterback spot, you kind of have to. And I think, Frost's staff, I think, did an okay job of that, where you threw out some early offers, kind of see what the kind of like no doubt type guys, the ones that, in 2 years, are going to be, top prospects. You see what you can kind of get out of that. And then, I think the one thing that this staff has done that I've taken notice of, and I hope others have, is they've been really aggressive with making early in-state offers. I mean, the 26 class, the 27 class, they've got offers out. And I think you have to do that now. I mean, going back to what I said, I mean, if you're going to build around, if you're going to kind of build your recruiting classes on local talent and regional talent, you're going to have to make those offers early and build relationships, because you have to recruit local kids like they're in Colorado or they're in Florida. I mean, you can't take any of that for granted. So I think they've been pretty forward thinking in that way. And I think it's been well received. I mean, I think, when you get an early offer from Nebraska and you're, a local kid, I mean, I think that's a big deal. So yeah, I mean, the quarterback stuff, that's just kind of the time frame they're on. I think a little bit more now, but I think they've done a nice job of kind of knowing who's around locally and within a couple hours here, and not being shy about just starting those relationships. And I think that's the right approach with the way recruiting is nowadays.
Bruntz, just a couple of minutes left here. You got my wheels turning a little bit with talking about how they've recruited local kids. Obviously, a guy like Christian Jones is a big priority for next year's class. They've already got several commits locally for next year's class as well. But an offer that went out, not early, I wouldn't say, but kind of about in the time frame you would expect, is Pierce Newberry from Millard North. how are they prioritizing him, a guy that physically at least might profile similarly to Christian Jones, but's had a very different high school career so far?
Yeah, no, he'd had the Iowa State offer for a long time. But, his dad's a former Nebraska player. The program obviously means a lot to that family. And Mooberry is an interesting case. I mean, you watch him on the field. I mean, he's a really rangy kid. I want to say he was probably more of a safety rover type.
Yeah.
But you can see where, you add 30 pounds to that frame pretty easily and take advantage of that athleticism. And you got something working there. So, I think they're in a good spot for him. I think that kind of run of offers that they made, I want to say it was in early January. I think those are all guys, Jackson Carpenter at Lincoln Southwest and Ryman Zieber at the tight end down in Platteview. I think those are guys that they're in a good spot for. And you just kind of, with Mooberry specifically, Nebraska didn't buy there a ton. Obviously because of Vermoss being committed and, evaluating there. But I mean, I think both of those guys are really nice prospects that you could build a class around. And, it was kind of with Mooberry, you're kind of like waiting for that offer. And I think it's a good one. I think they beat some other schools in there too. So we'll see how that plays out.
Well, he's certainly from a good place, right, Bruntz? I mean,
he is. Good stock come out of Illinois.
Can't go wrong there. That's Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. We appreciate it as always, Bruntz.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Bruntsy.
That's our guy, Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we've got some Hurrdat hot seat to get to here on a Thursday.
Maybe I'll ask you what your favorite cereal is.
Ooh, I did love some cereal back in the day. We've got Hurrdat hot seat coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, La Vista location, because there's two now. There's one out in Gretna as well.
That is true.
One of my favorite locations, though, not Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, is our friends Pratt Dental in North Platte, Nebraska. They were the first dentist to be certified. That's the word, certified in the BioClear method and modern smile design, which can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. Because it's less invasive, that means it's less time, less waiting, fewer appointments, because you can get multiple restorations done in the same day. To check out Pratt Dental, to find out more about the BioClear method, go to prattdental.com. That's Pratt dental.com/BioClear-dental-treatment, or go to prattdental.com. Just click on their services tab and you will find the BioClear treatment under there as well. Or if you're old school, you can give them a call, 308-221-2800. Sometimes it's nice to just give somebody a call and see what's up with our friends over at Pratt Dental in North Platte, Nebraska, creating healthy smiles.
Smile large.
Big smiles. Big smiles. We are going to do a little Hurrdat hot seat now. Do you have one that you're itching to ask me?
So, we were talking a little bit about plane rides with John Fanta earlier.
Yeah.
And we spoke on pet peeves a bit. And, I threw it in the group, the YouTube chat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to change my question, because the question I threw into the chat was the one I preloaded in the back of my mind. Which that question was, what's the number 2 pet peeve on your list? If number 1 is those standing up on planes,
sure.
What's number 2? I said gate crowders, and you said barefoot people.
Yeah, which I think is actually number 1 ahead of. I would rather have somebody stand up or crowd the gate.
I don't have a lot of barefoot people on planes.
Oh, it's bad when you get one, though, man. I think I had one time. I'm trying to remember when it was. It's been a while, because I don't generally fly that much, but
like completely barefoot or like sandals?
No, like they take their shoes and socks off on the plane. I saw somebody clipping their toenails.
That's disgusting.
On a plane.
No way.
Just flying, the shards just flying all over the place.
What were people next to them thinking?
I don't know what they were thinking, but I was horrified. It was like 3 rows ahead of me, and I could see them like propping their foot up on the seat in front of them, and you could just hear the click, click.
That's disgusting.
It was horrifying.
The most disgusting thing I've ever had with a toenail incident or fingernail incident.
Oh, no.
I was hearing a lot of commotion in the hallway of my old apartment building in Sioux City. Okay. And I go out there, and these 2 dudes are just talking in the hallway. The guy is standing in front of his apartment door, clipping his fingernails and just letting them fall onto the carpet in the hallway.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
What are we doing?
That's Corey says lock him up. That's psychopathic behavior.
What are we doing? So my question to you is this: we're going to go a little bit cleaner, less gut churning. If you had your choice,
okay,
window or aisle seat?
I don't have a huge preference. I don't like flying. Like it is not a thing I enjoy.
You're a middle seat guy.
When I do, I'm heavily medicated, so I don't really care where I'm sitting because I basically am passing out as soon as we're seated.
So you're not a flyer? You don't like it?
I hate flying. Listen, I understand the science of how a plane takes off, but it feels so unnatural for this thing that weighs like 100 tons to just, and I know it's going fast, but when you're in a plane taking off, it feels like you're just slowly crawling into the air, and it feels like the most unnatural thing in the world to me.
Dude, it's just like a fat man going down a water slide. Like
it's the opposite.
Landing, a lot of speed.
landing makes sense to me, right? Because it's a controlled descent. I get it, but you're just slowly climbing up into the sky, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. This thing's too heavy.
Hey, talk to the Wright brothers.
So yeah, but I really don't have a huge preference because I do take some doctor prescribed medications to help with the anxiety. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask.
Nothing. No, it's doctor prescribed. My anxiety is well documented. But if I had to choose, I would go aisle because you know me. I'm a frequent bathroom user, so I want to be able to not have to like crawl over people to get to the bathroom.
Meanwhile, I'm a camel. I'm taking the window. I like the wall. Because for me,
from the window to the wall.
No, I stay at the window and the wall. And there's no
sweat.
The
lean?
There's no sweat.
There's no sweat. Okay.
But
no one's crawling.
No. All my females on the plane are
next to you
doing window seats. No, I like to lean against the wall and sleep.
Okay.
So. The window's great because I can control the shutters, right?
Sure, yeah.
And, a lot of times people like to have the shades up, and I can't get a lot of sleep if I'm doing that. So if I'm in control of that, then it's kind of like, being like the driver and you control the radio.
Yeah.
Like I control what we're listening to.
I
control how dark it's going to be.
I'm the captain of this.
Exactly. Look at me. Don't look at me.
I'm the captain of the shade.
So yeah, I feel like I have a lot of control when I'm
from the window,
not to the wall.
No, just from the window seat.
Yes, from the window seat.
That's fair. No, the leaning makes sense. If I wasn't medicated, which makes sleeping very easy, I'd probably care more. But I almost always prioritize bathroom accessibility over everything. So the aisle makes sense for me. Amazing Daniel on YouTube says, I get annoyed with people who get annoyed at parents with babies. It sucks for the baby. It sucks for the parents. Put the earbuds in and deal with it. I get it's annoying, right? But it's also like, what option do they have?
Well, and here's the thing. Like, they're more stressed out than you.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're worried about their kid making a scene, so it's miserable on your flight.
Yes.
So if their kid is making a scene, that's even worse.
Yes.
Because they came in with the
worried
ultimate
about
stress.
Yeah, so they're stressed not only about, hey, making sure their kid's okay, but also making sure that the annoyed guy in 3B is not losing his mind. Listen, noise-canceling headphones exist for a reason. Just pop those babies on. And you're good to go. Don't be a jerk about somebody with a baby on a plane. And listen, and I'm the guy that doesn't like kids.
You know what? I feel like I can do anything today, Shane, based on what Ravi's talking about right now. Like, you know what? If I wanted to fly, I could just jump off this roof and fly based on the words coming out of Ravi's mouth.
Can I give you guys something that
he's pro baby right now, man? Are you hearing this?
No, I'm pro not being a jerk to people who have to fly with a baby.
He's pro baby.
Can I give you guys something that I know I annoy people with?
What's that?
Because you mentioned being in control of the stereo when you're driving. I'm a channel changer. So I don't necessarily want to hear the music. I want to hear the DJ talk. So if there's 2 songs in a row, I'm off to the next station till I can hear the DJ talk or I can hear the commercials because I like to hear the production and that kind of stuff.
This is Z1043. Bring it to you live. We got the tunes for you.
Because chances are I've heard all the music 100,000 times already. I don't necessarily need to hear that. I just want to hear the DJ and I want to hear what he's talking about.
I couldn't care less about what the DJ's talking
I
about.
wanna hear the music.
Yeah, give me the music. If I want to listen to talk radio, I'll listen to like stuff like we do. I'll listen to them talk. I have very little interest in FM radio. People talking.
And talk
to
radio
me.
is great because it's just talk the entire time.
And you know, DJs are like what on for 15 seconds?
Yeah, like 15 to like sometimes in the mornings they'll be on for 2 or 3 minutes, and that's the most annoying thing in the world. It's like, hey, let me just listen to my music. All right, if I wanted to listen to talk radio, I would tune it to AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, or our guys KFOR in Lincoln.
Amen.
But
That's where
when
I'm
you're
going.
but when you're in
brother.
another town or something, like if you go to Des Moines or Minneapolis, aren't you trying to find something that's interesting to listen
music.
to? But it's the same music you've heard 100,000 times.
My Spotify playlist.
Music, podcasts, whatever. I'm not channel surfing for local FM DJs.
You're not looking for 89.3, the country music station of Walnut, Iowa.
Yeah, I don't need 91.1, your classic rock Des Moines. I don't know if that's a real station.
It's 95 KGGL.
Oh, okay.
I don't care.
You would know.
Not even a little
be the
bit.
guy to know.
Yeah, no, I'm not tuning in for the DJs. I don't know that we have time for another one here, so we'll have to maybe wrap this up.
That's my fault.
Seconds.
Yeah,
Way to go,
thanks
Shane.
a lot, Shane. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Bob Nightengale. There were some interesting happenings in the Baseball Hall of Fame voting. We will talk to Bob Nightengale. He's from USA Today. Man, Amazing Daniel's really hitting us up on the
He's going at it.
He got us on
He's going
YouTube.
after
He
it.
got us on Twitter. Apparently, the plane debate is very popular with Amazing Daniel and our other YouTube commenters. We appreciate everybody chiming in on that one. I've got some good for that hot seat ones saved up.
I'm just gonna cut this short. He says the wife says when the middle seat's open, you look like you might smell bad, like a dirty hippie. You don't, but you look like you might. He says fair. Dude, if you have that look, maybe I need to do that too so people avoid sitting next to me.
Absolutely. That's the way to go. Coming up next, we got Bob Nightengale covering baseball for USA Today here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back.
It was kind of super sweet and nice the way you got the call and when you see Cooperstown and the phone call and we kind of settled in. Okay, man, I think you are going to make the Hall of Fame. So it's really nice.
will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
It was kind of super sweet and nice the way you got the call and when you see Cooperstown and the phone call and I kind of settled in. Okay, man, I think you are going to make the Hall of Fame. So it's really nice.
Wrapping up the show here on a Thursday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are joined now by Bob Nightengale. He is not only a Major League Baseball columnist for USA Today, he's also a Hall of Fame voter, which is very good timing considering the events of this past week. Bob, how are you this morning?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks.
Bob, we appreciate you joining us. Obviously, the Hall of Fame class of Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, and Joe Mauer, at least in terms of players, was voted on this week. Any surprises in your mind in terms of Joe Mauer just sneaking in over that 75% threshold, or maybe a Billy Wagner coming in just under it?
You made Mauer made the fact that he got in on the first ballot in the sense where, he only caught, 921 games. He was almost, play as many games at first base at DH, where he was only averaging about 6-7 home runs a year. So the fact that, he joins, Johnny Bench and Pedro Rodriguez as the only catchers to be first ballot Hall of Famers, it's kind of a staggering set.
Bob, as I think about first ballot future Hall of Famers, especially at the catcher position, growing up a Cardinal fan, do you think Yachty or Molina will be a first ballot someday?
He should be. I think he's I think he'd go down as, maybe the greatest defensive catcher we've seen, just what he meant. And I certainly think the fact that Mauer went in first ballot, that, Yachty's got to go in first ballot with a higher, vote total. So I definitely think he belongs as one of the greatest catchers who ever lived.
We're talking with Bob Nightengale, Major League Baseball columnist for USA Today, Hall of Fame voter. Bob, as you kind of look at some of the guys that didn't make it, there seemed to be sort of a push for Andrew Jones. Meanwhile, a guy like Gary Sheffield, who I think was a better overall player, certainly a better hitter, maybe didn't have the same popularity, even though he ended up slightly ahead of Andrew Jones in the vote. Do you think guys like that have a chance to eventually creep their way into that Hall of Fame, that 75% number?
Yeah, I think Andrew Jones will eventually get in. It's probably not going to be next year. I would think the year after. Unfortunately for Sheffield, it's the last year on the ballot, so you have to go in by the Veterans Committee. I think really the only thing that hurt Sheffield was just spending that winter with Barry Bonds in being in the Mitch report there. Even though he says he used that cream just to heal some scar tissue. And but yeah, I voted for Sheffield every single year. I think he's outside Bonds. I think he's the most dangerous, most feared hitter there was around.
I'm with you. When I think about Gary Sheffield not being in, and not having a true failed test to his name, but just an accusation. It surprises me that Sheffield is probably goes down as the biggest loser on the ballot if you can label somebody. Who would you say is the biggest winner on the ballot? Whether it's somebody that made up some ground in the voting process, or even one of the three that got in.
Yeah, I don't think there was anybody that had a staggering start that we saw. That you say a winner besides those three. For a consolation prize, I mean, Billy Wagner's got to think that he's disappointed the fact he's only 4 votes short, 5 votes short. That okay, he'll definitely get in next time. So he's got to be happy about that. But otherwise, I thought we'd see a bigger jump for Carlos Beltran, than he received. Other guys, in fact, Utley comes in, about 30% or so, which is about what everybody expected. Maybe some of the guys that, if you want to see a winner, maybe a guy like Torrey Hunter that just stayed in the ballot, where once Jones gets in, people may say, if Andrew Jones is in, for his defense, everything else, maybe we should put in a Hunter. Only had one less Gold Glove, and he might have had more home runs, I think.
Hey, Bob, I'm thinking about next season a little bit too, and Ichiro is going to get on the ballot. So far, we've only ever seen one unanimous Hall of Famer, and that's Mariano Rivera. Should Ichiro be unanimous?
Oh, absolutely. About the greatest contact hitter, we've ever seen. If he wanted to hit home runs, he could have done that too. You put his stats from Japan with it. He had more hits, than Pete Rose. So no, he definitely should be a unanimous Hall of Famer. So hopefully someone doesn't say, I'll use that vote for somebody else, thinking he's going to get in anyway. He doesn't need to be unanimous. But yeah, certainly he should be unanimous Hall of Famer. He was that great.
Bob, you kind of got me thinking with talking about Joe Mauer and how only a couple catchers had made it on the first ballot. How much, in your opinion, do you see guys kind of weigh how long a player's been on the ballot in terms of how they cast their vote? Because it's not usually just as straightforward as, I think this guy's a Hall of Famer. Isn't there a little bit of, there's a status to being a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? How much do voters, at least that you're aware of, sort of play with that margin there?
I think it comes into effect. Obviously people change their minds so much, for when you look at the last 2 years of Scott Rowland starting off like he did, barely even making it past the 5% the first time. Todd Helton, checks in at 16.5%. So a lot of people change their mind in time by hanging around the ballot. I do think it. In our case, for me, I didn't think he was the first ballot guy, but I knew that in a couple of years, Buster Posey's going to be on the Hall of Fame ballot. If I vote for Posey, and pretty much have to vote for Mauer. He had better numbers. He didn't have the 3 World Series rings, but that sort of thing. So I think it comes in people's mind, but I do think people are checking off more names now than ever before.
Bob, kind of going along with that, we were talking about this earlier with the Gary Sheffield versus Andrew Jones debate a little bit. How much does the gravitas of a player outside of their numbers weigh into your sort of decision-making process? And I guess I just mean like the either impact they had on the game, or, a lot of people talk about the most feared hitter of this era or whatever, but maybe they didn't hang on as long, so their cumulative numbers aren't as good. How do you kind of weigh just the kind of the peak versus accumulation of a player and sort of the role they played in their era of baseball?
Yeah, that's what the Andrew Jones, I think that's what's hurt him. He just hit a wall. And, he was so great there in Atlanta. And then, came to Dodgers, was about, 25, 30 pounds overweight, released early, about a year and a half in the contract. So, yeah, I like to have, at least 10 years or so of dominance. there's a lot of guys that, come and go. I mean, people talk about Johan Santana. Yeah, he was great for a short bit. So was Brett Sabernig and, David Cohn. But like to have the guys that were great for a long period of time. It would have been interesting when everybody's talking about Adrian Beltre. Well, he was, those 5 years in Seattle wasn't very good at all. And if he had those 5 years at the end of his career, I don't think he would have nearly got the vote total he did. But he finished so strong. But yeah, I mean, I like both. I mean, I like a guy to have at least 10 years of dominance in big time numbers as well. Whether it's a close to 500 home runs, that's in the higher batting average, the better.
Bob, who's a player you watched growing up that you so badly want in the Hall? And maybe it's not just growing up, but just over the years. You've watched over the years that you so badly think should be a Hall of Famer.
Well, the two guys I thought the base writers did injustice to was Fred McGriff and Jack Morris. McGriff was so steady. He got in on the contemporary era committee, but he should have got in by the writers. Jack Morris, he was as big time pitcher as there was in the game, and because he had a higher ERA, didn't get in by the writers. Finally got in by the Veterans Committee. The one guy I think that deserves to be in there is Barry Bonds. With all the talk of the PEDs and everything else, but I think you can make an argument that he's right there with Babe Ruth as one of the greatest players who ever lived. I mean, nobody was a greater hitter than Barry Bonds. So I think he gets in one day, but I think it's going to take a while. Same with Clemens for that matter. But there was other great pitchers too besides Clemens. But Bonds was just so much better than everybody else.
Bob Nightengale from the USA Today, Major League Baseball columnist and Hall of Fame voter. Bob, we appreciate you joining us this morning, giving us a little insight on that process, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bob.
That's Bob Nightengale from the USA Today. Really interesting stuff there. And, I'm a Bonds guy through and through. Like, I get that, I get the accusations, I get the steroids and everything like that, but again, just put a little.
I tell people this all the time, Ravi. He still had to hit the ball.
And listen.
And what was the difference? Did you hit it? Was it the difference of hitting it 330 and 360, or was it the difference of hitting it 400 and 450?
Well, and listen, he was going up against pitchers that were on PEDs. How much different is it than Bob Gibson pitching from a higher mound for half his career?
Don't put that on Bob
That's a great
Gibson's
point.
name.
I love Bob Gibson, but listen, each era had their advantages. We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.